It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Welcome everyone to the Sam Lesante pre-election show. We do this to give you some information and think about different things. But most importantly, my friends, November 8th is very important, particularly this year. You know, it seems like every year we say it's important and it's very urgent that you go and vote. But now more than ever. I had an interesting conversation today. I bumped into one of our number of people who watch our show, but the lady said to me, she says, I watch your show, Sam, but I don't agree with you all the time. And I said, that's great, because we can agree to disagree. And today we'd like to bring some facts to the table. We have some people who are very much in the know, maybe more than I know. That's a little difficult, more than I know. Appreciate the response to the Susquehanna Polling and Research, incidentally, that we had done, the scientific poll, making the Sam Lesante Show the #1 talk show in Pennsylvania. And the number of that are watching our shows, we really appreciate it. Anyway, getting on the show today, we have Rick Morelli, certainly no stranger to this show. He is the past chairman of Luzerne County Council. We have the star now. Might have to call him Mr. McElwee. He was on Fox and Friends recently. Charles McElwee, who is the editor for RealClearPennsylvania.com, and of course our own Lisa Schugardt, who is our news director here at SSPTV. Welcome everybody. Nice to see everybody. Now I have to mention Mike DeCosmo, my friend, is on special assignment and he will not be joining us today.
He's upset that he's not here.
Yeah, I'm really upset at that, because who am I going to pick on?
I know.
I'm going to have to pick on Lisa. I got to pick on
I knew
somebody.
it was coming to me.
All right, before we have a lot to talk about. Let's talk about, I'll start with you, Charles. Being that you're the big star now, we have to call you Mr. Ackman. No, what do you think are the top issues for voters in the state of Pennsylvania?
It's quite simple. The economy, crime, and those are the top issues. And those issues aren't confined to Greater Philadelphia. We associate the issue of crime, for example, with the fact that this is a city confronting a record homicide rate, shootings that are reaching record levels, the reality that the city is not safe. But that tale applies throughout Pennsylvania. This is a state of so many small to mid-sized cities and boroughs where the issue of crime is also a major issue, where youth violence is a crisis in school districts, and where quality of life is a top concern. But moreover, the fact of the economic conditions, of the reality that we're living in this inflationary climate, it creates this advantage for the Republican Party, because when voters go to the voting booth, when they're casting their votes, they're directing that negative reaction to the issues of crime and the economy toward the Democratic Party. So that creates this advantage for statewide candidates, congressional candidates, and even state legislative candidates throughout Pennsylvania, and including in Greater Hazelton, where crime and the economy are top concerns here as well.
What do you think should be done, or should have been done, to curb this? Because I understand in Philadelphia the crime has gone up. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So
in Pittsburgh, the crime has gone up.
Yes.
Okay. So we have an election this year, and we have Shapiro, who is running against Mastriano. We'll talk a little bit more about that in detail. But I've never met Josh Shapiro. I'm sure he's a very fine person. Okay, but when I think about his position and the fact that crime has gone up, I get a little nervous, as to could he have done more to worry about crime than to worry about the Little Sisters of the Poor and sue them over health care issues. That has me really troubled.
He's the chief law enforcement officer of Pennsylvania in his capacity as Attorney General. And yes, I mean, the issue of crime is pervasive throughout the state, and you're dealing with a crisis of municipal services as well. Police departments in various localities that are so stretched thin. Their police forces, their rosters are dwindling. They can't retain cops. Cops are going elsewhere. Cops are electing to retire early. But Philadelphia itself is a story of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, the fact that you have activists in office there, a district attorney there, and Larry Krasner, who believes in decarceration and decriminalization as his solution to criminal justice. The problem is you have these suburban voters, especially in greater Philadelphia, who aren't going into the city anymore. They've been remote workers for a few years now, and the reality of crime, in addition to the convenience of remote working, they're not even thinking about going into Center City. So recently we've had closures in Center City, 2 Wawa locations, for example, closing on Market Street, but so many employers in Center City are electing not to renew their leases in skyscrapers, not because of remote working, but because they don't want their workers in the city due to the conditions of crime caused by the leadership of the city, which is Democratic. Nevertheless, you have these voters in suburbia who can swing the statewide margins in Pennsylvania races, and that is competitive territory. And even though they acknowledge the problem of crime in the city of Philadelphia, they're still inclined to vote for a candidate like Josh Shapiro for governor.
Why is that?
I think that part of the problem is they're disconnected from or unaffected by the consequences of the policies that they support. They live in prosperous communities that are relatively safe, I mean, comparative to Philadelphia, as safe as can be. But unless you're affected by living in the city of Philadelphia, you're not even thinking about the city. Unless you're a parent, and I think that's a different story. So if you're, let's say, an upper middle class parent living in Bucks County and your child is going to Temple or Drexel, you're worried sick over your child walking city streets, or your child who's a young professional living in Fishtown or Northern Liberties. But other than that, if you're just remote working for, let's say, an employer based in New York City and you're living in one of the collar counties of Philadelphia, the area has become so transient population that these professionals are trending Democrat, including health professionals, doctors, nurses, who are more inclined to vote Democrat now than they were in the past.
Well, for the likes of me, I don't understand. If you see these problems existing and then you want more of them, I don't understand it. Lisa, your take on it.
Well, you see the people in the cities, though, they're now seeing where the criminals are being arrested, but they're being let out again right away. So they're seeing the reality of what's happening, and then they're recommitting crimes again. And I was reading the Standard Speaker, and I saw that Dane Watrow said when he was out campaigning, because he's running for the 116th, that he said people were afraid to open their doors when he was going door to door. And I thought, what a statement that was, because you're thinking crime, the cities and everything like that, but you're talking the Hazleton area, McAdoo, the Schuylkill County, Luzerne County, that people knock on your door and you're afraid to answer your door nowadays to let someone come and campaign at your door. That says a lot. So I think a lot of people are feeling that. You said about the education too, that people are afraid for their children. And the police, nobody wants to be police anymore, because they see that they do their job, they arrest the bad guy, and then the bad guy gets put out on the street again in these big cities, not around here, but in the big cities. And so then who can blame these people for not wanting to be police officers in major cities? How would you like to have that job? That's like banging your head off a wall. You do your work and then they're let out again and you get to go arrest them again. So it's tough. Crime is really tough. And I think it's starting to impact everywhere, that you figure, like where we've always said we're in Northeast PA, we're in a safe section. I don't know if anywhere is really safe anymore. You don't know what could happen anywhere, but crime is definitely on the minds of people in Pennsylvania and across the country.
Rick, how do you fix it?
Well, I guess 2 points, Sam. With regards to the crime, the issue there is the fact that the people who are making the policies, they're not supporting the police. They don't have their back. So when you go to the cities, like Lisa said, that you're arresting people and they're going back on the street and they're saying, I'm putting my life out there and all this other stuff, and we don't have the support. They're not giving us the money to it. You have these people who want to defund the police. I mean, that's chaotic. When do you want to defund the police? And so it comes down to, the answer to your question, it comes down to the people who are making those decisions. If they're Democratic-led politicians in those cities who are weak on police support, that's why the crime rate is up. I mean, you could see the difference between the cities that are Democratic ran versus Republican ran. That's the answer.
Well, you see, here's the thing. Charles just said, when you have, with all due respect to the professions, if that's true, when you have professional people who who are professional and they see what's happening with a particular party in different cities and the crime rate going up, then why would you want to support that? I mean, that's...
Well, I don't know that answer. That's the craziest part about it. I mean, we're going to talk hopefully a little bit about immigration, people just flowing through the borders, and the drugs coming through and the crime. Why? That's just common sense to stop that. Why wouldn't we do that? But that's political. I think there's ulterior motives as to why the Democratic Party wants individuals to come through our border. So it's silly, but the fact is that, and listen, it's not Democrats to me, it's liberals. The liberals, left wing, are the ones, the woke community, the radicals are the ones, and I've always said you don't listen to a small percentage of the people to make decisions for everyone, and unfortunately I think the Democratic Party does that. That's the problem there. But I want to make one other point to the issues that you asked, that what else is out there, and I think to me, in getting around the community, inflation. I mean, inflation is just skyrocket, go through the roof. I mean, just go get some pizza and sodas, and it's nuts. And so, people are hurting, and that comes back to policy. It comes back to our government and how we're handling that. And those are the things that I think, just two of many of what are on people's minds when they're going to go vote.
I mean, I said to Dan Muser today, we'll be showing the show throughout the week. I said, I'm like, I get dumber every day. I get dumber every day. I just can't understand the logic. When you see a right, it's right, and a wrong is wrong. All right, and I don't care if it was reversed. If it was the Republicans had cities that the crime were up, I'd be the same way. Why do you continue to put them into office? Why do you continue to put people in that are hurting you? Okay, and they're causing pain. Rick, I hear that, my wife can hear that every time we go to the grocery store. I mean, people come up and it's sad. I mean, you can see the pain. Now, fuel oil, $5.50, $5.85. The lowest today was $5.45, and it's crazy.
Well, and it is, but it comes down to the policies. I mean, we'll get into it with some of the people running for Congress and for governor. But the fact is that they don't want to open up our natural resources right here in Pennsylvania, which could obviously bring down prices, help the economy, et cetera, because the left wing is all about electric and green energy and all that stuff that, if we don't do this, the world's going to end in a couple of years. That's just not true. And so those are the people who are leading it, and they're listening to them, and it all comes down to votes and power. That's how it works. And so somebody has to get in there. Obviously, I'm a Trump fan. I think he tells his mind. People have to understand it's not about how he acts, it's about the policies. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about people who could go in with policies, which, again, obviously it's not a presidential race here in the next couple of weeks, but very important races here that can change the direction of our country.
Well, you see how radical it is. They're spending, as Lisa said, they're bringing millions of dollars in to beat, Mastriano, to beat Oz. Okay, I mean, they're like in Panicville, all right, because how did it get this way, Charles? How did the radicals begin to control our country, ruin our families, ruin our kids, have people going, I mean, it's just insane.
It's an institutional advantage on the Democratic Party side. So you can make the argument that that nonprofit realm, and the media and higher education, so many institutions that are so powerful in Americans' everyday lives, they are solidly Democratic, and that creates an advantage for any Democratic candidate. And that is especially the case in recent years for progressivism, and that's why even in local races in, let's say, Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, where you literally have Democratic socialists running for office and winning, they're winning, one, in part because they're taking out longtime incumbents in a climate that's very anti-incumbent in the past 5 to 6 years. But in addition to that, they have this institutional backing that allows them to have a financial advantage, a leg up, when they're running among younger professionals who will vote D no matter what.
Folks, we're doing a pre-election special. I know it's interesting to find out some of these facts. You deal with facts. You're seeing it. You're buying food. You're paying energy. I just got my car filled up. It was $94, and it's just sad. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, pre-election show, my friends. Trying to just bring some things on the table and make you consider who you want to vote for. In November 8th, very important, very important. Very happy to have the Pottsville Republican Herald as a media partner. We're very happy about that. Of course, you know the Standard Speaker has been our media partner for many, many years. But these are two papers that provide information, local information, that's very important. So we're thrilled about having the Pottsville Republican Herald on board. My guest today, Rick Morelli. He's been with us all the time. He was the past chairman of Luzerne Council. And Charles McElwee recently was on Fox and Friends. Very proud of Charles, editor of Real Clear, Pennsylvania, and our own Lisa Schugardt, who is our news director. Rick, we have some local elections. Let's talk about the reps elections.
Yeah, the state reps. Again, let's remind the voters out there that there's a lot of confusion. Every 10 years, they redistrict the districts, and you see all these people running for the district. So let's take a step back. We all know Tara Toohill, who's joined us many years and has now won, and now a judge up in Luzerne County, which well-deserved. And so what has happened, Bob Schnee took her position to fulfill her her seat until November. So Bob Schnee, State Rep Bob Schnee's out there right now, but his term ends in November, and that seat basically kind of goes to two. The 117th will be won by Mike Cabell. Mike Cabell's from Cunningham, Pennsylvania, great guy. He ran in the primary, ran against 2 or 3 people from up north, and he won, and he has no opposition here in the general. So Mike Cabell will be the state rep in the 117th race. In the 116th race, there is contested. You have Dane Watrow from McAdoo, former mayor, great guy, well known in Schuylkill County, and that 116th is both in a little bit of a combination of Schuylkill County and Luzerne County. Now he has opposition against Mrs. Rodriguez, who's from Hazleton. I don't know much about her. I know she's out there, she's working hard. But again, you know, you have Dane Watrow, who's a former military person. He's been in the community, served the community. He's hustling. You know, we'll see how it goes. I think that, in my opinion, I think Mr. Watrow probably has the edge from what I see out there. But those are the 2 races that are on that level, on the state rep.
Lisa, what do you know?
Well, Yesenia Rodriguez, she's a business owner in town. She has Kiki's Bakery that she opened up where the Rhodes End pub used to be.
Oh, okay.
So she has that business doing very well. From what I understand, I hear rave reviews about her bakery. So she's very well known for that because people have been talking about her bakery. And so she has several children, and she's active in the community. So she is trying to, you know, make her footprint and to
What
get
is she
into
bringing
politics.
to the table? What is her?
She is concerned, I believe, about children and their future. I think that was her primary thing that she's running for education. She said she would like to use money from the pandemic to reduce class sizes. So I know because she has a couple children, I think 4 children, that she is very concerned about education, and she wants to hire more teachers, she had said, who speak Spanish. She wants to help small businesses because she herself, being a small business person, she had said how long it took for her to open. And she also cited a need, which is interesting too, which a lot of people are saying, a need for more apartments, more housing. I mean, that's a cry that you hear everywhere, but especially around here with now we have all of these warehouses coming in, and they're going to be bringing more employees. So I know Dane has been concerned about that as well, talking about the need for more police, more housing, more schools, because of the people that are supposed to be moving here when all of these warehouses open up that are coming to our area. So, so she's known in the community, and Dane obviously is very well known in the community for his military service, and he works for the school district. So it'll be an interesting race to see, you know, who can get their voters out the most.
Charles, how important are these state rep elections?
They're quite consequential because they play a major role in issues in the state legislature, ranging from the municipal code and how zoning laws shape the future of municipalities in Pennsylvania. They play a role on healthcare policy at state level at a time when so many hospitals are stretched thin. They're dealing with their own crises, from the fact that patients delayed necessary health care during the COVID-19 crisis, independent of COVID-19, and now hospitals are overburdened with those patients. In addition to that, you have a workforce crisis in these hospitals where they can't keep workers. And you also have the fact that they're dealing with workforce issues on their end where they're responding to constituents' concerns at a time when so many small businesses can't keep employers. So they're quite consequential. The state legislature does not get enough credit for the power that it wields, and state representatives can play a major role in Harrisburg and what can happen here locally in Greater Hazelton.
Rick, I found it fascinating when I asked Dane Watchell, who was on the show. I said there's over 203, I think, legislators in the state of Pennsylvania. So when one person goes down and brings their ideas, etc., I said, well, you know, how do you get your point across? How do you get that a point? He says there's one word: compromise. And I think we all could appreciate that, you know, and that's exactly what you have to do. I mean, you've done it,
Yeah.
you know, with school board, you've done it on the council.
Well, you know, you need someone in there because, like you said, there are a lot of politicians out there in the state. A lot of it comes down to the budget. Again, if you have a Democratic governor and you're a Republican-led legislature, you got to work. You got to figure a way of working together. But you got to be able to, in my opinion, you got to be a little bit bold. You got to be a little bit savvy. So you got to have the right person because those people out there are tough. You go out to Harrisburg, you're dealing with some very interesting, tough people, some tough politicians, and it's politics. It's not a fun sport, trust me. And so you have to have somebody there who could go in there, who can handle it, who could work the middle, and who can make deals. You're not always going to get your way. And that's the thing about, like you said, you have to be able to meet in the middle and find ways to help each other.
Well, you have a lot of experience in that because you were in a school board, right?
Yep.
Okay, and then you were on the council. Mm-hmm. And of course, now the council is, it just isn't what I thought it would be. You know, I'm hoping that we can get this council back to doing what is right. I'm sure you have some opinions on that, but that's another show. In dealing with people and trying to make compromise, like this lady said to me today, she said, you know, I watch your show, but I don't agree with you all the time, and that's good. That's a good thing because, you know, you could agree to disagree, and that's what debates are all about. But when you're looking at the fact of what we're living with today, and we're living with people, you know, when I say they're in pain, you know, how could it be, Lisa, as a mother, you go to the grocery store, you're trying to provide what you can provide, you're on a fixed income, I mean, you know, and then you're shocked, not because of their fault, because that's the way it is, just, you know, and then you come home and you find out that you need to buy fuel oil. And then you say, now, what are we going to do here? Okay, then your kid wants to go here, and you want to at least maybe enjoy some kind of life with your husband or wife or whatever, or your spouse, and you find that you're getting clobbered. And here's the thing, there is absolutely no need for this. That's why I say I get dumber there is no need for this to happen. Why does the public allow these things to happen? I don't understand that. I want someone to tell me that. Can you tell me that? Can you tell me why the public will continue to, like crime, they'll put the same people in that are not supporting the police. It just drives me crazy.
There is a theory. I mean, like, my theory is a lot of people, we take for granted, I mean, and these gentlemen here, and you more than me, pay attention to what's going on in the world of politics. But I'll talk with some of my friends, and I'll say something to them, and I'll go, how about what so-and-so said? Or how about this? Are you going to watch the debate? I don't watch that stuff. I'm not interested. Sam, a lot of people, I mean, they do see that the prices are going up, so that might have an impact that'll wise them up. But they don't pay attention to what is going on, and they don't. And I have a couple of friends, and they'll say, you know, like, I vote the way my mom and dad voted. That's what they tell you, and that's what they do. And they say, I don't like to listen to it. It's all negative stuff. They all talk about each other, which it is all negative stuff, and they all do. Yeah. And I mean, if I was in charge of advertising, first of all, California wouldn't be able to be paying for the ads in Pennsylvania because that wouldn't be acceptable. You should have to keep the money in Pennsylvania from Pennsylvania. And And then also, when you do a debate, you can't mention your opponent's name ever. You can only talk about what you're going to do. Because all we hear about is that Johnny did this and he's bad, and Susie did this and she's bad. We never hear what they're going to do or why their plan is going to work. So Sam, if we could get together, we'll plan this out. We'll change the debate rules for the country so that when they do the debates, and then a lot of people nowadays don't even want to do debates, and they get away with that, and I don't know how they get away with it.
Yeah. Only while you're talking on this subject, you and I talked a little bit before about the governor race, and we talked about money, and again, goes to your question, Sam, as to why does this happen? Well, a lot of it comes down to money. You know, Shapiro has a ton of money coming in from outside the state.
That shouldn't be allowed.
Which again, where's the money going to? And you could appreciate this, Sam, a lot of it's advertising. We know advertising works.
He's certainly not spending a penny with us.
He's not, but we know it works. But the question is, when you're putting the money, two things. When you're putting the money out there and you're sending out just false information, you're trying to confuse things.
Yes.
And why is that happening? Why is the money coming in from outside the state of PA? It's because there are different groups out there who have motives, who want to win. And it's not for the best interest of Pennsylvania. It's for the best interest of their power.
That's
and that's how it works, unfortunately. But I think, you know, if people, the ones who do pay attention are the ones who vote, those 35%. But they unfortunately have to go in between the stuff. If we got more people to pay attention, I think we'd see different results.
I said this many times, and I watch these commercials, I want to throw up, really, because it's all, I can make a 30-second commercial, Rick, and make you look like a saint. I can have people crying after they see your commercial. And what people don't understand, 99% of it's paid actors, you know, theatrics, the whole bit, just the senior citizens. You know, you see the ad where they're rapping Oz, okay? Completely bull, okay? But you have an older lady say, forget about it, never vote for him. She has no idea. She got paid for doing it, I'm assuming. And it's sad how they just, that's why I like shows like we do. You bring a candidate on and you talk, and you have an opportunity to see and hear, and you'll be able to tell the phoniness of what's happening. Charles, you do that every day. You know, you're involved. You're doing research, and sometimes where credits. There's a lot of good conservative Democrats out there, a lot of moderate Democrats that mean well, okay, but it just.
And then you have people like Mike DeCosmo, who's really Republican. He calls himself a Democrat, right?
Right. I missed Mike today. He said, darn it, you know, who am I going to pick on? Okay. You mentioned how very important the state reps races are. Okay, so when we're looking at the United States Senate, and we're looking at the governorship of the state of Pennsylvania, that's a whole new ball game. I asked Muser today on the show, I said, you know what people think? They're all the same. They're all a bunch of politicians. They all tell you what they want to tell you, okay, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, well, Sam, he said, if you don't have the majority to turn these things around, he said, that's what, you know, and he's fighting every day against that. Wouldn't you agree, Charles?
Well, of course. And I mean, and Muser's an interesting story. I mean, he's confronting, we're looking at this realignment in Pennsylvania, right? So it makes me think too, you were mentioning the conservative Democrat. I mean, that's an endangered species. There really, there aren't many left. And there's no longer a home for them. And if anything, locally, we're looking at at least for now, the twilight of the Democrat in, let's say, southern Luzerne County. But it'll be interesting to see what it looks like in the years ahead, because this area is also, the demographic reality is that Hispanic populations historically trend Democrat. In recent cycles, Republicans have tried to make inroads there, and they have had some success. But in the years ahead, it'll be interesting to see how those trends unfold locally, considering the political and demographic composition of the area.
Folks, we're talking to Rick Morelli, Charles McElwee, and Lisa Schugardt. Pre-election special gives you a lot of food for thought, makes you get excited about different things, but most importantly, please vote. We'll take a break. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Sam Lesante Show, the pre-election show, folks, trying to bring some information to the table. My email, sam@ssptv.com, and thank you so much for making our show #1. Susquehanna Polling and Research recently just a scientific poll, And we appreciate the fact that we're covering the bases that are local and neighborhood shows. My guests today, Rick Morelli, Charles McElwee, and Lisa Schugardt, talking about the election midterm. Please vote. Okay, congressional offices here. We have two of them. We have Bognet and Cartwright, and we have Muser and Waldman. We'll start with you, Rick. Let's talk about the congressional candidates.
Yeah, so this is the second time around for Jim Bognet and Cartwright. Years ago, Cartwright was untouchable, okay? But the wind is changing. Obviously, there's an expected change here with the Republicans in changing that. Bognet was pretty close last time around. And from what the polls say, they're very tight as we speak. Bognet's working hard. Again, the benefit he may have is going to be the Republican wind behind his back. I've talked to some people locally who've been involved in politics up in the Scranton area, the Dunmore, and I said, yeah, but Cartwright still has those Irish Catholics out there. They're going to vote that. And you know what they said?
Those Irish Catholics, Charles.
No comment.
They're not all Democrats, but that's how they vote up there. But they said, guess what? They said, it's changing. It's changing. So a lot of these, point of it is that a lot of these staunch Democrats are moving to the Republican. I think Cartwright's nervous. It's going to come down to the wire. Again, let's talk issues. What are the issues? I did not see the debate, but the debate, I thought, from what I heard from many people, Bognet killed him. He went after him. He's tying Cartwright to Pelosi, to Biden, and I think that's factual. Talk about facts. Cartwright is on one of the policy committees that Pelosi put together. He's creating the policies, and I think that's powerful. And if you connect the dots to the direction of the country, of inflation, of immigration, all those things, that's where you have to differentiate of what direction the country, where you want to go. So I'll stop there with that race. Maybe Charles could talk about Muser, but the difference there is the candidates, what they're running for, and then the issues. And obviously, Congress is very important.
Charles?
Well, no, it's interesting. I mean, Sam, I come from a family of Irish Catholic Republicans who paid their dues in Hazelton years ago. Republicans who were Republican on the South Side when Nixon ran against Kennedy, relatives who voted for Nixon over Kennedy, when that was considered an act of cultural betrayal.
Yeah, that's right.
So but now locally they're catching up. So but with Cartwright, I mean, that's his base, right? I mean, the Irish Catholic Democrat in Scranton, the fact that Scranton's part of this district. We talked earlier about how the conservative Democrat is an endangered species, but the Scrantonian Democrat is a unique species, and they are quite loyal to their ancestral party. And that helps Cartwright in the margins, but the fact is, Lackawanna County and even parts of Scranton, Green Ridge neighborhoods there, you have lifelong Democrats who can't take it anymore with the leftward direction of the Democratic Party. And the fact is, even though these voters are Democrat, they're conservatives. And their viewpoints are indistinguishable from those of a Republican in this day and age. So that, when you consider the realignment of the congressional district, the fact that historically Democrat areas are now trending Republican, it could be potentially perfect timing for Jim Bognet. The electoral headwinds creating this advantage where, as Rick was talking about, Cartwright was once, you couldn't find a safer seat. But Cartwright is quite vulnerable when you consider the present climate.
Lisa, your take on that.
Well, it's going to be interesting.
Everything's interesting.
Bognet was also saying about the American Rescue Plan. He was blaming the Democrats for the prices going up and then also ending the Keystone XL pipeline. I saw part of the debate. He did pretty well, but Cartwright held his own as well. So Cartwright's a name very well established in the area. You wonder, and you look at the polls, and do polls even mean anything anymore?
If you pay pay good money for them, they mean something.
But are people being honest last time the polls were wrong for Trump and everything. So are people being honest? Are they afraid to really say what they think?
Yeah.
I don't even know if they're accurate anymore. So
I agree with you. I agree.
I don't know, what it is. So I think, Bognett probably does have a very good shot at it. And we'll see, though. I mean, Cartwright is very well established. If people just stick to their guns and say, I'm going to vote for like my mom and dad, who they voted for, well, then Cartwright's going to be, back in office again. So
I could agree with you with the polls. Our poll was a whole different poll because we're talking about television programming.
yeah,
so,
absolutely. I'm
but
talking about the political polls.
Political polls, people play games, I think.
They're afraid to tell what they think anymore.
Especially, I've taken a couple of those polls just to see how you begin to hear when they ask questions, then you begin to see how they become slanted, okay, in the direction, okay? Yeah. And at that point, you say, well, who's paying for this, okay? And you could tell that they're slanted, okay?
You wonder, too, if you don't give the answer they like, do they not use your input?
Yeah,
Sometimes I wonder that, too.
True. Yeah, that's true. Charles, how do you think about those polls?
Well, right, I mean, RealClearPolitics runs a polling average, so they're monitoring independent polls every day, including for congressional races. But even beyond polls, just look at the voter registration patterns, just locally. I mean, if you look at the voter registration advantage for the Democratic Party now in Luzerne County, I think we're on path to seeing Luzerne being a Republican majority county by the 2024 election cycle. In 2016, when Trump was elected, when Luzerne played that pivotal role in the statewide winning margin for Trump that year, this was still a solidly Democratic county. But that's no longer the case. And cycle after cycle since then, Republicans have won offices. Democratic office holders have switched to Republican. So what would that suggest? That would suggest a Republican advantage. So for a candidate like Cartwright, I mean, this is the fight of his life, and really the biggest fight he's had since he won the upset over Tim Holden in the redrawn district in 2012. And the irony is Tim Holden was a very conservative Democrat, one of the last blue dog Democrats. You can't help but wonder what would Holden be today.
A nice person, too.
Yes.
Tim is a very nice person.
That's a good point.
We have a vehicle here, okay, with local programming for people to be coming on. And when we get to a political period, then they have to pay for political shows. And we've reached out to Bognett, and I've reached out to Cartwright. Cartwright at least responds. His manager, whatever, will respond, and, we'll do this, okay. We heard nothing from Bognett. I'd love to have him come on to be able to talk about different things, the same as Cartwright, because 30-second commercials, as I said, I can make anyone look bad or good. It just, it doesn't, I see tons of wasted money.
Sam, and I'm not saying this because I'm on your show, but I agree with you 100% that you have two individuals who could take an hour of their time to come down, and I'm telling you, watching someone speak, seeing what they have to say goes far more than the fake commercials.
Absolutely.
And the greater Hazleton area, and along with all the other areas that you cover, is a much needed area for people to see. And I mean, it's not my race.
I just can't understand it. Muser and Waldman, your take on that?
Well, Muser and Waldman, she is a financial rep in the Medicare industry, which I was not aware of till I looked it up. She comes from Lycoming County. Muser, obviously the incumbent in Jackson Township. She said she wants to be the everyday person in Congress. So that's kind of what she's going after. And Dan is saying fire Pelosi. So he wants.
I think Rick agrees
Pelosi
with that. So does Charles.
So I don't know too much. Like, her name was new to me. I didn't know, too much about her. She said she knows the kitchen table struggles. Well, that's what we're wondering, what those kitchen table struggles, what they're going to do to the people watching this show and all the voters, because we're all feeling the kitchen table struggles.
Let me throw something at you here, okay? And tell me if I'm crazy or if I'm off track. Lisa, if one of your family got sick and, you needed to get a doctor, all right? What do you do? Do you look for a person who is experienced in, that particular ailment, or do you just say, Sam Lesante, he's a nice guy, he comes from a big family, we like him, he's always been so nice. He waves to me. Let's get him to operate on my daughter. Okay? Would you do that?
No offense,
Okay.
Sam.
Okay, so would you do that, Charles?
No.
Okay, and Rick, I know your answer. Okay,
Yeah.
so now here's the point. We have people like Fetterman who are running in Shapiro and Mastriano and Oz, okay? Does anyone look at, forgetting do they look at their background? Do they look at what they're going to do? Because they're affecting our life. Today we're paying the price because they did what you're doing. Irish Democrat, Italian this, Polish that, Slovak this. Complete nonsense, and we're paying the price every day. We're suffering. Tell me, I don't understand it. You'll go crazy to get the best, and you don't care whether he's from Idaho, Indonesia, whether he's Russian, black. You just want the best qualified doctor.
You do your research before
Yes,
you need
but
surgery.
politicians,
You gotta do your
he's a
research.
nice guy. I remember crossing. Hey, hi. Well, it doesn't make sense to me.
Go ahead, Charles.
No, go
Because I mean, can we transition to the Oz Fetterman thing?
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
I mean, I think to me this is the most important race that's out there, the Senate. You talk about two individuals that are totally different. You have Fetterman who wants to be the regular guy. I get that.
Yeah.
But that is to an extreme of a regular guy who has no background, no track record, and his track record is crazy, versus Dr. Oz, who's an extremely intelligent person, who I would rather have him running my business than Fetterman. And a quick story, my son's 10 years old. He doesn't follow politics, but he watches TV and he sees the commercials. And he starts asking questions, and he said, well, why would anybody vote? Now, this is a 10-year-old. Why would anybody vote for Fetterman? Because he's going to let prisoners, people who kill people, out of jail. And if they killed one of your family members, well, maybe if they got out of jail, they would do that to somebody else. That's a 10-year-old kid with common sense who doesn't know the politics of it. Has nothing to do with doesn't know Republican or Democratic parties. But why, get down to the matters of what's this guy going to do? Because the state Senate is extremely, this seat is so important. It's more important than any other seat right now.
Folks, you're watching the pre-election Sam Lesante Show. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Remember, 24/7 SSPTV.com. You can watch all of our shows. This is the Sam Lesante pre-election show. Remember, November 8th. Please vote. On the phone with me is former Congressman Lou Barletta. Lou, nice to have you on the phone.
Thanks, Sam. Good to talk to you again.
We have our panel here. I'm sure you know them. We have Rick Morelli, Charles McElwee, and our news director, Lisa Schugardt. I'd like to get your input on the gubernatorial race with Mastriano and Shapiro, where you think it's going to go, what your thoughts are.
Well, if you look at the polling, Sam, Shapiro has depending on which poll you're looking at, close to a double-digit lead, and has accumulated a good war chest. So it's difficult for someone who's run statewide. It's difficult if you aren't able to get on the airwaves, especially in southeastern Pennsylvania, to overcome the money difference. But we'll wait and see. There's still a few weeks left to go, and the advantage that Mastriano has, he's got a strong base on the Republican side across Pennsylvania, and they're really counting on a lot of the people who would not answer polls. They're counting on the fact that they will show up on election day, but it would take a big grassroots effort to overcome the difference.
Well, Lou, you ran for governor, and you were there. You saw what goes on. Why did you endorse Mastriano?
Well, it's simple, Sam. I mean, if you look at the issues, the things that I believe, and what Josh Shapiro believes, it's the complete opposite. I agree with Mastriano. I believe that we should protect life. I'm somebody who's been pro-life. In Congress, I had a 100% voting record for life, and that means a lot to me. If you talk about what our future is, it's in the energy, and the Democrats. There's been a war on energy. There's been a war on natural gas and coal, And that's what Shapiro stands for. So if you talk about schools and school choice, I believe that no child should be stuck in a failing school. And Mastriano feels the same. And, if you look at some of the things, I am father of 4 daughters. I would probably go out of my mind if my girls were still in school and a boy wanted to play sports, against them. That's the difference between Mastriano and Shapiro. So if you look at the issues, there's no question, that I would support Doug Mastriano over Josh Shapiro.
Lou, we were talking before, for the likes of me, what you just mentioned, okay, any mother, any father, anyone who has children or whatever, would have to take that in consideration. Based on what you just said, why do you think the poll is, why do you think he's leading, Shapiro's leading, based on crime in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and the different areas that, you mentioned, and I use it, you said he was more interested in going after the Little Sisters of the Poor than worrying about crime in Philadelphia. Didn't you mention that?
I did, exactly. That's exactly right. And, the difference is, Shapiro's been able to raise so much money. He did not have a contested primary. Unlike the Republicans, we had 9 people in the race, which means that in trying to raise money, you had 9 people, going out there, trying to raise money, where Shapiro was able to do it alone. So he accumulated a war chest, and, being able to get on TV. If you look at some of Shapiro's ads, you'd never believe it's the same guy.
Yeah, right.
The Attorney General.
We were just talking about that. I said I could make anyone, I could do a 30-second commercial and have anyone look like they're a saint, or I have them crying or laughing, okay? I'm going to ask if the panel, if they have a question. Rick, you want to ask?
Yeah, just curious. Hi, Lou. Again, there's so much I could talk to you about, and I'd really like to talk to you about how the Republican Party screwed up by not really focusing on a candidate who would be much closer to polls who you would be. But what I do want to ask you is that we know that in running in the state of PA, there's 2 main areas that you have to eat into that vote, which is Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. If you were running this race, what would be the issues that you'd be hitting on in those 2 cities to turn the Democratic vote to Republican?
Well, crime would be the number one issue. I've been down at Kensington in Philadelphia a number of times during the campaign, and if you Rick, if you ever took a ride through that area, you wouldn't believe you were in the United States, yet alone in Pennsylvania, right there in Philadelphia. The drug addicts literally having drug deals right in front of the police cars while the police were in the car, and they're not allowed to do anything. The point is, where is Josh Shapiro? Don't those children have the right to have a safe neighborhood and to be able to go to school without stepping on needles, which are literally all over the sidewalks? That would be one issue. And the second issue that I would really drive home, and I think this is the most important, if we want to give children a chance in life, we need to make sure they get a good education. Why should those children be stuck in those failing schools, just because of their zip code, just because of where they live? And what have the Democrats done for them? What have they done for the inner city kids, all these years? And where was Josh Shapiro? And I think those issues would mean a lot. Another issue I think that separated me from some of the other candidates, I've been working with the building trades in Philadelphia, which I would have had their support. And as a Republican, that would be a first. And I think that would have been a difference as well.
Charles?
Lou, I'm thinking of Kari Lake's race in Arizona. Lake is running for governor as a Republican there, and it's going quite well. And it makes me think of what's going on with Mastriano's campaign. But going back in time, do you think it would have been in Mastriano's interest to have engaged the press? After all, the press is so deeply unpopular in so many Pennsylvania communities among so many voters. Would it have been his interest to just talk to the press, just as Trump did in 2016?
Yeah, Charles, I agree 100%. And I understand, where he feels that he would not get a fair shake, and that the press would report anything negatively in any interview, but they're doing that anyway. And so at least if you engage, you're able to get your positions out there. And even if you get a bad story or a bad article, your point of view of how you and where you stand will be heard. So I don't think, especially since, he doesn't have the money to go on TV to make sure people understand where, how he feels about positions. I felt he needed to engage with the media. And if nothing more, to point out the differences between him and Shapiro, and no matter what they write or the slant that they may put on it, if it's a TV interview, people will still hear his words and his point of view. And I think I think that's necessary.
Lisa?
Lou, a lot of the money that came in for Shapiro came from California. That shouldn't even be allowed. That really irritates me when I hear that another state is buying an election in another state. Something has to be done to change that, because if that wasn't the case, maybe it would be a more even playing field.
Yeah, Lisa, this is actually something that's been going on that really, I don't know if it caught people by surprise or caught people sleeping, but George Soros has been getting involved in local elections, in judge races, and they've been throwing money around in other states to, especially in the judicial races across the United States. And you're absolutely right. It's unfortunate, but that money difference is going to be very hard to overcome in this governor's race.
Lou, very quickly, we've got about 3 minutes left. Let me hear, what are your thoughts on Oz and Fetterman?
Well, I think Oz is closing fast, and I do believe that I think Oz will win this race. The fact that he's been able to point out, and raise the question, is Fetterman even physically and mentally able to serve, especially in the United States Congress? One point, Sam, I think that he needs to drive home. And actually, I've begun doing a statewide radio ads pointing this out. Fetterman supports a bill that denies parents rights to know whether or not their minor daughter, is having an abortion. Now think of how extreme that is. You have a 14-year-old daughter or a 13-year-old daughter who gets pregnant. She can have an abortion without the parents even knowing that she was pregnant. That's pretty extreme, and I think Dr. Oz needs to drive this message home of who Fetterman is and what he stands for, and I think should he do that successfully, I think he'll win.
There's a lot that people don't know that is being kept hush hush. Lou, thanks for calling. I appreciate it. I wish you and the family the best.
That's a good panel there, Sam. I hope you're paying them well.
They're getting big pay. I listen. I had to call Charles, Mr. McElwee. He was on Fox and Friends, recently, and now we have to bow down to the guy. It's amazing.
That's a good panel.
Okay,
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Louis. Well, guys, we got about a minute left. Anything to wrap up with, Rick? I mean, there's a lot. We could go on for another hour.
Well, Sam, I think you do a great job of putting a panel together, talking the issues, talking about the candidates, talking just straightforward of what's going on, making sure the public is aware of what's out there. Hopefully people could, in the next 2 weeks, pay attention, dig between the fake news articles and the commercials, and understand what these candidates are, understand how it could impact their lives, and go make a difference.
That's why we go to RealClearPennsylvania.com, right?
That's right.
Why we get the information. Charles, anything in closing?
Well, the economy, crime, energy, these are local concerns. They aren't national concerns. And the problem is, in this polarized age, we're nationalizing these issues when, in fact, they're issues that we're seeing in our own neighborhoods.
As Dane Watchwell pointed out,
Right.
Lisa, didn't close.
Yeah, I think people should do their homework, definitely. Read, watch all the Sam Lesante shows, learn about the candidates, and make informed decisions. But the bottom line is, it does come down to what we're all taking out of our wallet to pay for things. So how badly is it impacting you?
How long have you been in this business?
Too long.
Yeah. I mean, you just wonder today, it's just like crazy. I'm doing over 6,000 shows, and I'm getting dumber every day, and I'm shocked when I see what's happening. And I'm sure as a news...
Maybe things will surprise us. Maybe when actually people go to the polls, maybe
I
there will
hope.
be a great voter turnout.
I hope so.
And people will vote well informed. That's the most you can ask
That's
for.
the most I can ask. Folks, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.